Why everyone hates brutalism. This is brutalism. It's been called the ugliest architecture ever created. Urban terrorism, a crime against beauty. And yet, some of the world's greatest architects defend it with their lives. So who's right? Let's find out. Why everyone hates brutalism, the hatred. Walk up to anyone on the street, show them a photo of a concrete tower block, and watch their face. They'll use words like oppressive, depressing, prison-like, and hostile. In 2008, Boston City Hall was voted the ugliest building in America. Brutalist buildings are demolished more than any other architectural style. Some cities celebrate when they're torn down. But why such visceral hatred? What did brutalism do to deserve this? The answer is more complex than you think. There are three main reasons people hate brutalism. And honestly, they're all valid. Reason one, it looks like a prison. First, the aesthetics. Brutalism uses raw concrete, massive forms, and fortress-like designs. It's intentionally imposing. The problem? Human beings are biologically wired to prefer natural materials, human-scale proportions, and ornamentation. Brutalism violates all of these. Studies in environmental psychology show that people living in or near brutalist buildings report higher rates of depression and anxiety. The lack of detail, the gray monotony, the sheer oppressive mass, it affects us psychologically. This is an opinion. It's measurable. Reason two, many became crime-ridden nightmares. Second, the social failure. In the 1960s and 70s, brutalist tower blocks were built as social housing across Britain, America, and Europe. The promise? Modern living for the working class. Clean, efficient, utopian. The reality? Isolation, crime, decay. Elevated walkways became muggers' paradise. Elevators and stairwells crime hotspots with no natural surveillance. The buildings failed basic principles of defensible space. Residents weren't living in utopia. They were trapped in vertical slums. Pruitt-Igoe in St. Louis won architectural awards in 1951. 20 years later, it was so dangerous they demolished it with dynamite. That image, those buildings exploding, became the symbol of brutalism's failure. Reason three, the communist connection. Third, the political baggage. Brutalism became synonymous with authoritarian regimes. Soviet tower blocks. Eastern European Pineliki. Concrete brutalism was the architecture of communism. In the West, seeing these buildings reminded people of oppression. Brutalism looked like the architecture of control, of the state crushing the individual. Fair or not, that association stuck. When the Berlin Wall fell, so did brutalism's reputation, the defense. But here's where it gets interesting. Because architects, really smart architects, still defend brutalism. Why? Because the hatred, they argue, isn't entirely brutalism's fault. The intentions were good. Brutalism emerged after World War II when Europe needed massive reconstruction. The idea was noble: provide quality modern housing for everyone. No more slums, no more Victorian tenements. Raw concrete was honest, democratic, and crucially cheap to build. And when done right with proper funding and maintenance, brutalism could work. London's Barbican Estate? Now luxury apartments. Yale's Art Gallery? An architectural masterpiece. The National Theater? A cultural icon. The real problem, money and maintenance. The problem wasn't the style. It was that concrete needs constant maintenance. It stains, water infiltrates. Rebar corrodes. And governments didn't budget for upkeep. A neglected Victorian building develops romantic decay. A neglected brutalist building looks apocalyptic. When funding was cut, these buildings fell apart visually and socially. Brutalism didn't fail. We failed brutalism. The aesthetic argument. And here's something weird. Jens is rediscovering brutalism. On Instagram, brutalism has millions of posts. Young architects are calling it honest, authentic. And in an age of generic glass boxes and cookie-cutter mansions, some people find that refreshing. The verdict. So who's right? The people who hate it or the architects who defend it? Both. Brutalism's sin wasn't being ugly, it was being unforgiving. It required commitment, investment, and care. When it got those things, it could be magnificent. When it didn't, it became a nightmare. The buildings that failed weren't just architectural mistakes. They were social policy failures, economic failures, and maintenance failures. Brutalism became the scapegoat for deeper societal problems. Conclusion. Today, we're still demolishing brutalist buildings, but we're also landmarking some, restoring others, fighting over whether they're heritage or eyesores. Maybe the lesson isn't that brutalism was wrong. Maybe it's that architecture isn't just about design, it's about maintenance, funding, social policy, and how we treat the people who live in our buildings. Is brutalism beautiful or ugly? Architecture or abuse? You decide. Love it or hate it, drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want more controversial architecture deep dives, subscribe to Archi Archives. Next time, the building was so bad they blew it up with dynamite.